Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call this workshop of the MCAG Governing Board to order. The time is 2:32. I can't see, but we'll go with that one. 2:32. Can you call the roll, please? I'm here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Director Espinoza, Director Hogue, Director Serrato, Director McDaniel, Director Samra, Director Nagy.
Here.
Director Nelson, Director Pereira,
Present.
Director Silvera, Director Yanes,
Here.
Chair Pedroso.
Here.
We do not have a quorum.
Okay. At this time, I'd like to invite John Checkley to the podium for his presentation.
Government Board. Today we actually have a presentation from Behavioral Health. I know we talked a little bit last quarterly update about some projects Behavioral Health was involved in. It's really great timing as there's so many changes happening in Behavioral Health and the services they provide specific to housing and homelessness. It is a personal honor to be able to introduce Alexandra Pierce. I've had the honor to work with her and for her, actually, and I don't know which one I enjoyed more. She's just a great asset, not only to the county, but really to our community. And I'm confident after you see this presentation, you'll have a little better understanding of why. But again, I've never worked for anyone who was a better community-minded, creative thinker. So without any further ado, I know she's got quite a long presentation here. Miss Pierce, thank you.
Yikes, how do I follow that? John's going to make me cry. Good afternoon, board. My name is Alexandra Pierce. I'm the Assistant Director at Merced County Behavioral Health and Recovery Services. I am responsible for the administrative services as well as our housing teams and our public guardianship, public conservatorship, and representative payee programs. So specifically today, I'm going to be talking about kind of what the historical context of BHRS's housing has been and sort of this new world that we're navigating into. In fact, as of today, with the passing of Prop 1, I do have some information in today's presentation to talk a little bit about how that will shape and change some of our programs and practices as well. Okay. So if we can go, will this work that? Okay, let's see. Oh, it did. Ooh, okay. Excellent. So just as an overview, I will be sharing about our behavioral health housing services programs, all of our traditional programs, including our PATH outreach program, our housing supportive services program, our permanent supportive housing, our new transitional housing through behavioral health bridge housing, and then some things that are on the horizon. A little bit about our team. Our team for the housing programs is led by Iris Gunther Battles. She's our housing program coordinator. She currently has 8 staff. 5 of those are mental health workers, one of which is stationed at our navigation center. 1 is focused on community outreach. 3 are providing support to permanent supportive housing residents. We have 2 extra mental health workers, one of which is stationed at the navigation center, an additional one who provides permanent supportive housing support, 2 peer support specialists, and then an extra help office assistant. It is important to note that all of the staff assist with new referrals that come into our housing support team in order to be able to provide that outreach and connection to anyone before they get connected with their ongoing case manager. It's also important to note that we are hiring some new staff for our behavioral health bridge housing program, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later in the presentation. So traditionally, our housing program has been primarily focused on services and supports. A little bit about behavioral health and recovery services. We are primarily focused on providing housing supportive services to our Medi-Cal population, and specifically those individuals with severe mental illness and or a substance use disorder. For our PATH outreach, that is grant funded. Those services include case management, education and support, screening and referrals in connection to other community resources. For those services, it's about 90 days being able to provide that connection, get them connected with other services, and then transition them on to additional case management. Again, our eligibility for that is individuals who are residents within Merced County who have a severe mental illness or co-occurring disorder with substance use. Our housing supportive services programs are primarily funded through the Mental Health Services Act. These are housing advocacy and support case management for individuals who are current residents in our permanent supportive housing units. Eligible participants include those behavioral health and recovery services clients that are diagnosed with severe mental illness or co-occurring disorder. And there are, for some of our permanent supportive housing units, requirements as far as their funding to be eligible for those units. In addition, we have staff that are not only placed at our permanent supportive housing units, but also are field-based. Currently, these are all of our permanent supportive housing units. We have 31 total units. Pacheco Place, or our Project Hope West Side, is funded through our COC with HUD funds and MHSA funded. There are 8 units there. That's located in Las Banas. We have our Project Homestart. There are 4 units currently here in Merced. We are pending an additional 6 units as an expansion of that project through HUD funds through the COC. Our Shelter Plus Care program. The program has currently ended, but we do have 6 residents that had received housing choice vouchers that we continue to provide housing support services to. Gateway Terrace, where we have 9 units where we're providing supportive services for, and the Retreat, where we have 10 units that we're providing housing support services through. It is important to note that for each one of these, with the exception of Project Hope West Side, all of the funding for the subsidies for these programs come from either the COC or through the Housing Authority through either project-based vouchers or housing choice vouchers. And then all of the supportive services are provided through behavioral health and recovery services. Okay, so our new program, Behavioral Health Bridge Housing, the state calls it BB. Our current local program is called Bridge to Home. We received in June of 2023 a little under $7 million to be able to provide transitional housing for our chronically homeless, severe mentally ill clients within Merced County. Behavioral Health and Recovery Services hopes to soon bring 2 contracts before our Board of Supervisors for their review and hopeful approval. One related to infrastructure to support the 1213 Home Key project on V Street, and then one for 41 units also at 1213 V Street. With that funding, we were able to hire 5 additional staff persons, 2 mental health workers, 1 peer support, a staff services analyst, and an office assistant. And just giving a little bit of breakdown, because I know it was asked at a previous COC meeting, I thought this might be helpful to know. We have been coordinating with the CES for identification of those 41 individuals. 19 of those individuals are currently in emergency shelter. 9 are either in bridge or respite housing. And then 13 are on the street, and then 4 are kind of pending. They've been going from street to shelter and back and forth. So that's kind of those 41 identified where they're currently residing. Okay, so on the horizon, in addition to the allocation that we received for bridge housing, there's also the availability to apply for competitive funds. So as of April 10th, we can submit an application for round 3 of behavioral health bridge housing funds. We are currently working on an application. We had been reached out to regarding the Home Key CC 915 project within the city of Merced to provide for 20 subsidies for 20 of those units, as well as for ongoing supportive services as well. In addition, we're working on the No Place Like Home Mercy Village project, looking to bring that agreement before the board shortly. That would finalize a 65 unit project. The Housing Authority has committed to project-based vouchers for each one of those units as well. In addition, December 1st of 2024, we will have Care Court starting. With Care Court beginning, one of the key components of that is being able to assess for the housing needs of the individuals recognized, and they are kind of first come, first served for our behavioral health bridge housing. So we do anticipate an uptick of individuals who are reported to us to be able to connect them with that resource. And then in January 1st of 2026, with the implementation of SB 43 and the expansion of the definition of gravely disabled, we also anticipate a need for additional housing related to our conserved individuals, as the definition is expanded to include individuals with substance use disorders. So we will be looking for expanding additional not only treatment beds, but also transitional beds to meet their needs as well. And then, of course, there's the modernization of MHSA and Prop 1. I don't know if all of you have gotten the many memos that have gone out today that looks like it has passed. So just a little bit of background. MHSA was passed by Prop 63 in 2004. It intended to reform the new Prop 1 intends to reform and expand Mental Health Services Act, and I'm going to cover a little bit about what that looks like. So Prop 1 was really 2 different bills, AB 531 and SB 326, which I'll cover a little bit on each. So with AB 531, it's a $6.38 billion general obligation bond. It does plan on building 10,000 new treatment beds of supportive housing units, and with a primary emphasis on serving veterans. One of the difficulties with this is that we still don't know how those beds will be distributed throughout the state. Looking at some of the previous applications, it looks like it will most likely be competitive, and that we would need to apply to get some of that funding here. Another thing to make note of is that they're completely infrastructure or capital based, and it does not provide additional funding for the ongoing operational costs, either for subsidies as well as for staffing of these new facilities. All right. Now with SB 326, this is where MHSA would become BHSA, so it expands MHSA beyond mental health services to individuals not only with mental health needs, but also with substance use disorder. It is no longer, it's not providing any additional new dollars. In fact, currently the allocation is that the state keeps back 5% of the funds, and with Prop 1 going into effect, the state will now keep 10% of the funds, and they will take all of prevention services back to the state and no longer allow us to use MHSA funding for prevention. So this slide provides a breakdown of what our current MHSA components are under our current 3-year plan, and then what the transition to the new BHSA categories will be. So on the left, you can see with a breakdown of what our annual funding structure looks like. FSP stands for Full Service Partnership. GSD is General Services Dollars, also known as Community Services and Supports. PEI is prevention and early intervention. INN is innovation. CFTN is capital, facilities and technological needs. And then WET is workforce investment. If you transition over to the new categories, it now provides that 30% of the funds that come to the county will be spent on homeless and housing. Of that, half, so 15% overall of those funds will be spent on chronically homeless with a function on lowering the number of individuals that are in encampments. And then the remaining half, remaining 15%, will be focused on all other housing services. Then 35% of the funds have to go to full service partnership, but it's important to note that any housing needs for full service partnership need to come out of the housing pot. Then for early intervention, you can see no longer that we can't fund any more prevention services. And for early intervention, a little more than half is required to go to our population of under 25 years of age. Our general service dollars section has condensed quite a bit, and then no longer any funding for innovation, capital, facilities, or technology, but still a little bit left for workforce investment. And just to talk a little bit about workforce investment, that's providing training not only to our behavioral health and recovery services staff, but also all of our community providers to be able to get them trained on not only evidence-based services, but also, culturally relevant, new interventions, things to be able to help address the behavioral health and recovery needs moving forward. And it also helps us with a pipeline to be able to give some support to individuals that are going through school in order to be able to help recruit individuals to our community for this workforce. Okay, so the impact is further broken down. Oh, I'm so
I
sorry.
think Silvera has a question.
Hi, Alex. Sorry for the tardiness. I was busy with something else. Back on that last slide, are those numbers reflective of Merced County's numbers, or is that statewide numbers?
They are. That's Merced County's numbers on an annual basis.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
And now so it's an estimate, right? Because it fluctuates, but it's a good estimate. This next slide just provides the further breakdown of, our total pie got a little bit smaller because the state took additional 5%, so 10% total. And then the state has now dictated that we have different subsections of where things can go. And then the final pie is the breakdown of taking those subsections, splitting them in half even more between mental health services and substance use disorder. Okay. So a little bit more on the housing category. As I said, 30% total is required to go towards housing and homelessness, with 50% of those funds to be used for chronically homeless with a focus on encampments. Up to 25% of those funds may be used on capital project with the approval of our state entity, DHCS. I talked about all housing interventions for full service partnership need to go through the housing category, and that the actual treatment for mental health and substance use cannot be funded under this category. It is specific to rental subsidies, operational subsidies, shared housing, project-based housing. It has to go to the actual housing of individuals. And then it also has to focus on housing first model. So not only are the funds needing to go to housing, but we also can't require the individuals to participate in our services. But we do have to try to engage them continuously so that we can help stabilize them within their service. It is also important to note that currently we utilize, so the current estimate is about $5.8 million for this 30% in housing, and BHRS is already doing that with the services that we're currently funding. So that's just means to say that we're not getting any new additional dollars. We're already spending those dollars and we still need to go through our community investment to find out what the needs are. But BHRS has already been spending those funds, and the way that this was presented was that it's additional or new dollars that are coming in, and that's not really how it has been structured within every.
Lloyd, did you have a question?
Yeah. Back to the Housing First model.
Yeah.
I thought everybody knew that didn't work so well. Did the state, are they doubling down on this, or do you know?
Yeah, it's a requirement, and not only for our services, but I believe for all of our COC services as well.
It's still state law.
Yeah, still state law.
Yeah, okay.
All right, so 35% will go to our full service partnership category that requires evidence-based practices. It is standardized tiers that have been developed by our state entity on levels of care based on criteria and acuity, and we do have a step-down process. It includes outpatient services for ongoing stabilization and ongoing engagement in services. But this is really like the wraparound services to make sure that our individuals are getting whatever they need in order to be stabilized within our community. And then the behavioral health services and supports category is what is currently, or what will be, used to be called our community services and supports. And that's where we'll be required to fund all of our current children's system of care and adult and older adult system of care services, early intervention, outreach and engagement, any workforce investment, any capital and facility needs, any innovation pilots and projects. All of that will now need to come out of this reduced pie. Early intervention, like I said, 51% of that needs to go towards our youth under 25 years of age. And then there's no longer any funding available for prevention-based services through MHSA, or now new BHSA. It is an integrated 3-year BHSA plan for these funding sources. There is a local outreach and review process, and then the county does have an annual update that we provide. For counties with populations over 200,000, BHRS is to collaborate with the 5 most populated cities within the county. It also adds a requirement that at least one member of the Behavioral Health Advisory Board must be an employee of a local education agency. And really within the past couple of years, BHRS has been strengthening our relationship with education as mental health services become embedded within schools. And let's see. Okay, so for the last year, we have been providing informational presentations at our advisory board, at our Mental Health Services Act board, and ongoing planning council. April 12th is when the results will be certified. I made this presentation before it was passed, but once the official certification comes through, we will be sending communications to all of our contract providers and inviting them to a forum where we can, provide an overview of the information and how it may impact not only their programs, but also the ongoing 3-year planning process. And then we'll also be talking about ways that their programs, if potentially impacted, could be restructured, or ways that they can bill Medi-Cal in order to be able to continue those services within the community. In January 2025, we would start that community planning process, and then by June 30th of 2026, our new 3-year plan would have to be approved by the board and then submitted to DHCS so that we could begin this new 3-year plan July 1st, 2026. So our new BHSA plan with the new tiers would go into effect July 1st, 2026. That's it, but I am absolutely open to take any questions that you may have.
Well, thank you. Does anybody have any questions?
I just have a comment. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Alex, I will tell you, thank you. I feel like you know more about Prop 1 and its ramifications than the people that actually wrote it and put it together. I know I can tell you at a statewide level, the State Association of Counties took a no position on this item. And you could tell that it was the only proposition on the ballot. This is the governor's signature piece of legislation. And it's interesting that the implementation is when he's gone. I always find that interesting. But, and you could see that the voters narrowly passed it. I think his last count was 20,000 votes out of the millions that were cast that it actually passed by. I don't know how we're going to deal with it. I mean, when you talk about it, what's going to happen with current providers and funding is going to change. And we talk about, we say one thing and then do another when it comes to trying to impact people's behavior to help keep them from getting there, but yet we're going to take all that funding away. We're not going to do that no more. And then we're going to double down on a model that we've proven doesn't work. I think it's going to be a challenging time, and I just wish that the no votes, the no on Prop 1 folks would have been able to organize a little bit quicker, and this deal may not have passed. But you could definitely tell by the makeup of the state association of counties, the urban counties really favored this. Anything that wasn't urban was opposed to it because of, we actually can kind of get stuff done and we can wrap our head around the problem when you're in LA County or San Francisco or San Diego, where their problems are a lot bigger than ours are. I'm worried for us. I'm worried, but I'm glad that you have your head around on how it's going to affect us and how we're going to try to move forward with it. So thank you for the presentation.
Anybody else? Okay.
May I just say one more thing? I apologize. BHRS did provide each one of you a bag. We are trying to get our new 24/7 crisis warm line number out there. It is available for the entire community. If they're experiencing a mental health crisis, it is 24/7. So we do have a lot of other outreach resources. So if you're having an event or would like to share these materials far and wide, let me know and I can get you some additional. Thank you for having me here today.
Thank you, Alex. Go ahead and take a 5-minute break and come back and start the regular meeting. All right. We're going to go ahead and get the regular meeting to order. The time is 3:08. I'd like to also let everyone know that we have a Spanish translator present for those who may need language assistance. Juan is in the back. Hola. Yeah, thank you. Now, may we please have a roll call?
Director Espinoza, Director Hogue, Director Serrato, Director McDaniel.
Present.
Director Samra.
Present.
Director Nagy.
Here.
Director Nelson. Director Pereira.
Here.
Director Silvera. Director Yanes. Chair Pedroso.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Next, we have invocation by Stacy Cooley. Stacy, can you please come up?
Dear gracious Heavenly Father, we come before you today and welcome your presence into this room. Lord, we ask if there's anything in our hearts that's holding us back from hearing you, that you remove it and forgive us. We invite you to grant your peace and wisdom to this board as they go through today's agenda items. I ask that you give them discernment and understanding for each and every item to be discussed today. Father, if there's anything that needs a resolution or a creative solution, I ask that you provide inspiration and supernatural wisdom in this situation. Please guide and direct this board as they seek solutions to the issues that face our community. Lord, I thank you that you've blessed us with courageous and honorable leadership, and ask that you would bless them for their hard work and tenacity with which they serve our communities. Only you know the struggles that each of them face, so I ask that you meet each and every one of their needs, may it be financially, physically, mentally, emotionally, or even spiritually. Please touch every circumstance and situation that would attempt to distract them from the good work that you have planned for their lives and for our community. Your word says in Romans 8:28 that you work all things together for the good of those who love you and are called according to your purpose. So we ask that you do exactly that, Lord. Please work all things out for our good. I ask that you would grant your perfect peace and protection to this board as they make the decisions that impact our community. Please help them to always seek to honor you and to work for the greatest good for our families. Thank you that our steps are ordered by you, and as it says in Isaiah, that no weapon formed against us will prosper. We thank you so much for your faithfulness and dedicate this meeting to you. In the mighty name of Jesus, we pray. Amen.
Amen. Director Pereira, will you please lead us in the pledge?
Ready? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item number 5 is the approval of the agenda. Do any of the... we're going to move up item 14A for consideration because one of our directors has to leave early. So we want to get his input on that as well. We're above 10A. Yeah.
Motion to approve with the stated changes.
We have a motion. Is there a second? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Next item is public comment. Public comment is now open for anyone to speak on matters not listed on the agenda. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per person. And do we have anyone in the room today who would like to comment? Seeing none. Have we received any public comments by phone or email, or do we have anyone who wishes to provide comment to the board today?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we received a comment by email. Should I read it into the record?
Yes, please.
Good afternoon. I'm a regular user of public transit in the city of Merced. I currently wish to withhold my name out of fear of retaliation. My comment concerns TransDev's adjudication of complaints submitted against its bus drivers. I question whether this process lives up to its professed safety first standards. At the beginning of this month, I submitted a complaint about a driver of one of the bus's fixed routes. I had previously witnessed this driver's erratic and combative behavior with the public. He erupted in anger at the slightest provocation. On the day of my complaint, he screamed at me for walking toward the rear door while the bus was in motion. I immediately sat down until the bus came to a complete stop. While exiting, I told him that I had never heard of a rule like this. I asked for clarification and why he thought it might have been implemented. Rather than take my inquiry seriously, he responded with derision and mockingly imitated me. As he continued to yell at me, I heard growing hostility and aggression in his tone. I sensed that the situation could easily escalate into violence, so I simply said, "Okay," and I walked away. However, I could hear him yell toward me nonstop for a full 5 minutes. I did not dare respond or even look behind me. I fear what this bus driver will do to me if he encounters me again. My complaint about the incident was forwarded to TransDev. The TransDev road supervisor responded a few days later. He said that he reviewed the portion of the video footage that showed the driver reprimanding me to sit down. The footage does not seem to have audio. The road supervisor determined that the operator did not appear to have a rude or unprofessional interaction with anyone as far as the video shows. It appears that he did not look into any other more relevant portions of the video footage. TransDev's response poses more questions than answers. For example, how can a rude or unprofessional interaction be satisfactorily determined without audio of the words spoken? Did TransDev interview employees who worked closely with the driver? How much weight is given to the complainant's testimony? My testimony appeared to have been afforded zero weight against the inexplicably chosen footage of an inaudible surveillance camera. As people who rely on public transit, we place our lives in the hands of bus drivers. For the safety of the Merced County community, I urge MCAG to investigate TransDev's processing of public complaints. MCAG will likely find its process to be unsatisfactory. Lastly, I am more than happy to share with the board my full complaint and correspondence with TransDev. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. All right. Item 7 is, number 4 is reports and presentations. We have 2. The first is 7A, Citizens Advisory Committee report. We have Jose.
Good afternoon to all of you. I am here before you to briefly report the highlights of the MCAG Citizens Advisory Committee, which took place March 1st, 2024. In addition, I will also add a couple of sentences concerning the San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control District. Our chairperson, Michelle Symes Thera, opened the meeting. Mary Michael Rowland presented the action item 2024 One Voice Legislative Platform. Her presentation was approved unanimously and unanimously recommended approval by you, members of the MCAG directors. This was the only action item presented. However, the staff presented discussion items. Central California Household Travel Survey, Draft Regional Active Transportation Plan Update, Transportation Planning and Measure V Monthly Update. By the way, I saw a sign in one of the brand new buses that it says, I think, results of Measure V. On the rear. Draft fiscal year 2024-2025 overall work program and budget. Other reports. I gave a brief report on the last San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control District. I forwarded to you the monthly SJVAPCD's newsletter by Danny Gonzalez. I try my best to forward Danny's newsletters to the MCAG directors and also including the mayors. Just briefly, as one example, residents in state responsibility areas are required to clear 100 feet or more of flammable vegetation from around buildings, maintain 10 to 15 feet of spacing between shrubs, large plants, and trees. Keep trees trimmed at least 10 feet from any chimney and trimming dead limbs hanging over property. Remove all needles and leaves from roof, eaves, and rain gutters. Regulate watering and weeding of landscaping to keep it fire safe. Consultation with your local forestry or fire protection agency for additional requirements. I just presented the SJVAPCD fiscal year 2022-2023 report to the community booklet to Emily, and NAV. I hope our supervisor, who is a board member of the SJVACPD, Lloyd Pereira, will help me to get the other 10 for the rest of you. I really, you will take care of it? You heard that. Okay, so in that case, I am very happy that I don't have to bother the Modesto office for this, okay? So I really believe that the supervisors and the mayors should have, all the council members should have this booklet to see what is going on. Thank you very much.
Does anybody have any questions?
If you do, the staff is there to help you.
Thank you, Jose. All right. Next is Mark Samuelson from Caltrans.
Good afternoon. A few updates. One is Caltrans is reviewing their strategic plan. The old plan was for 2020 to 2024. So we are in the process of updating that. We're doing not a bottoms-up approach, but we're definitely looking at revising what the current plans are. With the new director, Tony Tavares, we're going to be incorporating his core 4 principles of Caltrans, of being a people-first organization with safety, equity, climate action, and economic prosperity. We do hope to have the new plan completed by late spring, early fall of this year. I would also like to bring to your attention Caltrans System Investment Strategy, or nicknamed CSIS. This is a document in which Caltrans does have a matrix in grading and rating projects as they align with CAPTI. We did do 3 workshops out in January to get some feedback. We do have the draft comment of our CSIS program out for a review. Draft comments for the CSIS document is due April 15th of this year. Last month, there was definitely some concerns with State Route 59 that was addressed in regards to flooding, pavement conditions, project status. Caltrans has been working with Director Guzman on addressing those concerns. We are going to be meeting with Director Guzman on those issues identified, and we're going to have a larger discussions about what we can do as a whole along the whole corridor of the State Route 99. We are in the process of identifying other safety issues that Caltrans should be addressing to look at State Route 59 as a whole on how we can improve traffic safety and the flooding issues that were brought up. Also, I want to bring up some updates on State Route 99, the pavement rehab project. So as of this week, the temporary K-rail will be removed from the southbound lanes. With that, we will begin our permanent striping on the southbound lanes 1 and 2. We do expect to have the striping completed by the end of next week, end of this month. Once we have the permanent striping in next week, we will be closing down the tunnel to the public. We will also have the traffic number 1 lane open on the new pavement that's just been constructed. And so we will have 2 lanes on the southbound going through. The tunnel will be closed to the public traffic. The constructors will be the ones using that tunnel at that time. With the closure of the tunnel, all the switchbacks will be removed as well at that time as well. And so with that does conclude my report. I am definitely here to hear any comments or questions you may have.
Are there any questions or comments? Yes.
Just a quick question. It's good news that we're finally seeing the end of the construction area. I saw some Caltrans updates. Are you guys also doing some ramp closures up and down through Livingston, those areas for striping? What's going on over there?
Oh, so the question is during Livingston, you're seeing work on the on-off ramps?
Yeah, is there some striping going on? What's going on over there? Or did I misread that?
Let me go back and see exactly what the work is going on in the Livingston area. And these are on the on and off ramps you're talking about?
Yes.
Yeah. So I can let me get back to the team, see what's going on there, and let me give you a full report on what's going on with those
Or
ramps.
you send them an email, just people thought, why is it so long? Nothing's been closed, or maybe just misunderstanding somewhere that they're gonna close the ramps for a month for striping, but maybe just some confusion somewhere. I'm not sure exactly what it was.
Okay.
Thank you.
Director Silvera.
Thank you. Yeah, I just maybe wanted to see if you had an update on the request that I had sent. First off, I want to tell you I called the District 10 office and immediately got email back from your I'm going to call it like your online portal, recognizing that there was a request. But this is regarding Ramus Road and Highway 152. Have you got any update on that?
So yes, we did receive that request. That did go to our project management group to see what we have in the pipe, and do we have any projects in our shop program to address that, or how we're going to go forward. I do not have a report for you today on that status. I will take that back, go back to our project management and see when we would be able to get a response back to you.
Okay, it was more of a like making sure that you guys are aware of that there was a kind of a safety hazard out there. I wasn't necessarily looking for us to go have to repave and redo everything, but I kind of want to know, as I explained to you guys before, that coming up with fair season, you have, I don't know the exact number of kids that have their animals out there at the school farm, but as the weeks click closer to the fair, the first week of May, you're going to have multiple trips a day by a lot of different kids coming out of there, and they're saying that there's that challenge in between, in the center of the two lanes of the highway there.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, I have a question. So, being that it's supposed to, or they're calling, I think, for some rain, that this is gonna, it seems like every time there's rain, it delays 99 further and further. So, if it's raining next week, is this considered another weather day that you guys aren't gonna be doing anything?
So yes, if depending upon how severe the weather is, that could delay our striping next week. We are looking at what the weather is, but forecasted, it does look like the storm's kind of easing up. But painting on wet pavement could provide a day delay and so forth. We do definitely need it to be pretty dry. So
I guess my question is, every time that this gets pushed back, it's based off of weather. So we've had two major weather incidents, right, with the floods and that heavy downpour and stuff. And this project's been going on for I don't know how many years. And you guys are really working on the core 4 priorities that you say you'll have your plan in place by late spring, early fall of this year, of 25, 26, 27, because the way you guys are going about it, it seems like it's not going to happen anytime soon. So I'm just really concerned. I appreciate the fact that you guys are expediting this project because we were talking about it, but this thing is just taking way too long. Regardless, I mean, you keep saying weather days in the reports. Weather days and weather incidents happen every so often. There's weather outside right now. So I don't understand why that we can't be doing stuff. If you say weather incident or something like that, it just seems like this is poorly managed. And I appreciate the fact that, you answered my colleague's question about the 152 and Ramus, but the fact that he calls and gets an email back from an online portal and then asks here, just the customer service is not.
Yeah, that was more of a compliment in that I had called the office.
No, I appreciate that.
Waiting to have a call back from you, and before you were able to get out of your meeting and call me back, somebody already had it entered in the system and emailed me to let me know that they were aware of the problem.
No, and I appreciate that. But what I'm saying is, it just seems like we're not. It doesn't seem like our issues are being taken very seriously, and this project should not have been taken this long. That's all I have. Anybody else? Okay, thank you. We are on item 10, but this is where we moved. Huh? I'm sorry. Item 8 is information items. These items are included for informational purposes and will not be presented by staff unless board members have questions. Are there any questions for staff? Director Nelson.
I don't have a question for staff, but I do want to point out that the city-county dinner for July has been moved to July 11th. It'll be a week earlier than what's on the current schedule in Atwater. So you can change your calendars there.
Okay. Anybody else? Yeah.
Weather-related reasons.
Is it gonna be too wet to paint the stripe
Yeah.
around the event?
Weather incidents. Thank you. Item 9 is the consent calendar, which has 6 items. These items may be acted on with one vote unless specifically removed for separate consideration by a member of the board, a member of staff, or a member of the public. Do any of the directors have questions for staff? Are there any comments from the public? Is there a motion to take action on these items?
Motion to approve.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Okay. This is where we're going to move the 14. Okay. We're going to go ahead and skip ahead to item 14, and I'm going to turn it over to, I didn't even welcome Nav up here, but we're going to turn it over to Nav.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As you remember, at the February Governing Board meeting, Director Pereira requested a future item to discuss how RW responds to illegal dumping in Merced County. Per the MCAG requested policy, agenda policy, such requests are to be placed on the next board meeting at which time the Governing Board will consider whether these is a major consensus to have a staff expend time on the issue and to have actionable next steps considering at the future meeting. On page 301 is an item regarding illegal dumping that was brought to this board for discussion back in April of 2021. After reviewing the minutes and watching the meeting videos, it was noted that there was no specific direction was given to staff. So I'm going to turn it over to Director Pereira to kind of lead this discussion.
Sure.
And I think James is online as well. So.
Oh, yeah. Okay, perfect. Well, to my colleagues, the illegal dumping is getting worse and worse. The majority of it falls on the county to clean up, even though, a bunch of it comes from the cities or residents of the cities. And so I just, I was thinking, how can we take care of this problem? And it just kind of occurred to me that the Regional Waste Authority is in charge of trash for us. And so maybe there's a nexus there to help deal with the problem. And so anyways, I just had asked, and so here we are. And I don't know if any of you have comment or questions, but I'll stop there.
Mr. Chair? Yes. First of all, I agree with our director that dumping on the county roads is not only is it unsightly, but sometimes darn dangerous. If you come in nighttime and you don't realize you're close to the road, people are not being cautious. First of all, they shouldn't be dumping to begin with. And second, they're not really trying to dump it way enough from the road. If you just slip it off, you can hit something, and it is quite dangerous as well. So I agree with you guys that something that does need to be looked at, and we had a discussion at our council meeting Tuesday regarding that, and where I said that because we just got done approving our contract with Jilton for next 10 years for our haulers. And one of the questions I asked was if the board makes a decision, whatever it's going to be, how does that impact our tipping fees? But Livingston already pays, So we had a discussion about that, and I think there's something definitely needs to be done. What Livingston has done, and we'll talk about it later on too, is we allow our residents 2 times a year to just call the city, say if they're going to get rid of refrigerators or whatever it is, none of the hazardous material, of course, They just call the city, they'll tell them what they're going to do, they can just roll the refrigerators, furniture, whatever they have, they put it out on the curb, and they come and pick it and haul it away. It's actually easier than trying to take it somewhere to dump it, you know? So I don't know how many other cities are doing that. Maybe something like that, and I don't know. County is rather unique in the way it's laid out. I mean, it's quite a ways, but I doubt some farmer out there is gonna really take a refrigerator and dump it on someone else's property. I don't think it's happening there, you know? Yeah, it's more of where we have higher residential capacities, you know. I'm not going to accuse any particular group, but you know, but that's where I think it is. So I would ask that if staff is working on this, that we also say what Livingston's doing, whether it's doing, we come with some ideas, not just put a RWA to say, hey, have staff go clean up. You know, maybe we need to have definitely need to have some sort of a solution. So I'm just asking staff to do that, you know.
So, Director Samurai, one of the requesting is to look at what programs each jurisdiction has
Yes.
regarding those cleanups.
Yes, you know, and the only reason I'm saying that is, I'm not saying nobody in Livingston is dumping it anywhere. Of course, I can't say yeah and I can't say no, but if other cities also implement some sort of similar program, where it's more convenient for a resident to say, you know what, I'm just gonna call the city and then have them pick it up from here. It makes it less incentive for them to go out and dump it somewhere if they can put it on the curb and be picked up, you know. So just maybe we can bring that and say how many other cities are doing it, or you know, just kind of work together, you know. And in the end, we definitely got to do something there. And I agree with you, Director Pereira, you know, that it is an issue and it's a dangerous issue.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think it's really, really there's no single approach that's a bad approach to it. But one of the things where my concern is I drive back and forth from Los Banos every day, and it doesn't matter what road you're on. What you used to see was the people that were getting rid of the refrigerator or the couch, you know, the big thing that they couldn't throw in their little can. What I'm starting to see more of is that it is, it's full truckloads. It's full, and when I say truckloads, I mean this is not just a little tiny trailer or something. These are big, huge trailers that they're literally going on the back way from Los Banos to Merced, Sandy Mush, Nickel, Turner Island, whatever road that you're on out there, and literally just dumping a whole trailer load of. Sometimes it looks like it could be maybe somebody moved out of a house and left a bunch of garbage there and they loaded it up and just go dump it out there. Sometimes it looks like it's like construction material. It's all over the board. And where I'm seeing most of the dumping is out in the county. And when it's in the public's right of way, we have to respond. We can't leave that out there because of the safety reasons that were mentioned. What I'd like to see as part of the approach is when we design our rates that we charge, it's unfortunate, but built into that rate needs to be, it shouldn't be just on the back of the county to pick this stuff up and go do the dump fees. As part of that rate, I mean, it's not like the county's throwing its regular trash, taking it. We're sending crews out that are going and spending, you know, and I know it used to take them about a week or so to get enough of the trash, if you will, to send a crew out and go pick up this spot, this spot, this spot. Now we're getting to where they're sending the same truck 2 or 3 times to one spot to go pick up all the trash that's out there. And so how do we look at it, building it into our rate? We have these community cleanup days. I know in the city of Los Banos, when they have them, we're not having them enough, because when the one in Los Banos at the fairgrounds, the line is all the way down the street, around the corner for a long time for people to come and dump there. So to me, that tells me that we're not doing them enough if the lines are that long. And then what's happening is people are just saying, well, I don't want to wait, and I dump them. Or you get the bad actors out there who are going and preying on typically some of our elderly people who don't have the ability to move it. Hey, I'll charge you $150 to come and clean this trash up, pocket the $150, and then it ends up out on the county's right away. So as I think any solution, looking at what's working in other jurisdictions, I think that's all part of it. But when we look at what we charge for our rate, I mean, I'm thinking the overall tonnage, you add a little bit to it that helps to cover these costs. It shouldn't, I don't think that it's fair that the county, our public works department, is bearing the whole cost of picking up the trash. And I'm not saying that there isn't people that live in the unincorporated communities who aren't dumping stuff, because they are probably too. But you know, you just got to go where the population centers are, and that's where a lot of it's coming from. And so if that's, at least for me, that's where I think how we kind of get there is to help offset some of those costs. Resources are tight for everybody, and we're bearing a larger portion of the cost than just what the residents that live in the unincorporated areas.
Director Yanez.
Yeah, so just some experience working with this, and I commute to Turlock and go through Hillmar and Delhi in that area, and there's one stretch of road that I'm like, well, what's going to be there today? And what basically working with other jurisdictions, what I've learned is a lot of the times it's someone who advertises as a hauler on social media. They do prey on other people, they collect the fees, and then they go and dump it because they know that the evidence that's going to be left behind is not going to link back to them. It's going to link back to whoever their customer was. And that's what we see up and down the state of California. That's what happens. If you do some proactive things like set up a pole cam, and we talked about, there's video surveillance with AI technology. If a vehicle sits and parks for more than 90 seconds, you can actually track it and do a license plate reader type of thing. Go back, knock on that person's door. Again, you don't have, hardened evidence to maybe issue a citation, but it says, hey, we see what you're in this area. And what we've seen kind of statewide with this is actually kind of curbed some of that, because now that hot area, because if other people see trash on the side of the road, what are they gonna do? Okay, well, I can dump my stuff here, right? So just maybe some of those type of proactive approaches, may be beneficial to do something like that. So,
Director McDaniel.
Yeah, thank you. Director Yanez brings up a really good point. That's exactly what I was going to say is you go to social media, you go anywhere, these companies are advertising that they do the hauling. They do not have a business license. I think maybe the county needs to do a better job of reaching out and searching for this, because we have a lot of folks who are doing it. They collect the fees for the dump site whenever they collect it, but they never make it there because that's an extra little profit in their pocket. And so I think the county, we should be more aggressive. As a county, we've been talking about this, and I think we need to go out and find the business license, because people need to be held accountable for this, because this is definitely something that's happening throughout the whole county.
the other thing too, just in my experience, working in law enforcement, we had meth lab dumps in Belico, and they were consistent every 4 or 5 days. And what we learned with illegal dumping is it's typically less than 2 to 5 miles of that person's residence. They don't drive far with this stuff. So.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, so I have one fella that manages about 800 acres of farms between City of Livingston and the City of Atwater. And he said, he goes, not every time that there's information in the pile of where it came from, but he goes, if it's on the north side of the road, and he finds something, it's from Winton. It's from Winton, and if it's on the south side of the road, the address will always be Livingston. And it's not all the city's problem. I kind of made it sound like that in the beginning, but we're getting it outside of Winton, we're getting it outside of Delhi, we're getting it in the county as well. I just think that if the only way for all of us to kind of participate together is if we do it through MCAG versus each jurisdiction. The county has one cleanup per unincorporated community a year, and it's like not as bad as maybe Los Banos, but there's a line that's sometimes a quarter mile long of people waiting, and people get tired of waiting, or we only go till 2:30, and so if they're in line and they don't get there at 2:30, the other thing that happens is people clean up on Saturdays. If they don't make the dump by 3:30, they're already loaded. They're going to get rid of it before Monday morning because they're off to work, right? Or whatever. So there's a lot of different ways and reasons why it happens, but I just was hoping that as a board we could talk about solutions.
Director Serrato.
Thank you, Josh. Two things we've had success with in the city. One, our ratepayers fund the bulky item drop-off site at Highway 59 in Yosemite. That's been successful. And then two, we organize at least 6 big cleanup days a year. The city's certainly not immune to illegal dumping. Far from it. It's been a big problem for a long time, especially with a lot of good illegal dumping, habitat with the alleys, the creeks, those things are big attraction for illegal dumping. But just with our volunteer cleanups, we keep track of it, and we probably take in, last count we had over 200 tons of trash just with those. Wow. Once a month, so or every other month. And then we organize a lot of things just using volunteers. There seems to be a big volunteer appetite for it. A lot of events will have 100, 200 people come out to help. So they tend to have some success with that, and then also with the the bulky item drop-off site, which does a pretty steady stream of business too. So those are two big things. But it's just, organizing volunteers or additional services. Obviously, there's costs associated with that, or there's, big organization involved with the volunteer efforts. But certainly, there's plenty in the city as well. So, we try to fight hard to do it. But we see too at the beginning, doing our volunteer cleanups at first. For example, the first one we did was big one was in Loughborough, and we took out probably 15 tons of trash plus just from that neighborhood, plus I forget how many, dozens of tires, dozens of appliances, and now essentially there's nothing in Loughborough. So that's been a huge improvement there in other parts of town as well.
Director McDaniel.
Yeah, I'd just like to say I just did junk removal near me. There's over 30 advertisements on Google for Merced. And I think the last time I checked, which was probably during COVID when we had a really problem, we only had one registered person for a dumpster with the county as a business. So I think it's on the county maybe to go through this, and maybe the cities as well, because these are located in the city. Do they have a business license? Do they have the proper insurance? And I think I see Mark here. I think besides it, isn't there a franchising license that they have as well? Yeah. Because our main junk haulers that we contract with have the biggest license, and then this other has to be supplemental. So I think it's on our government entities, each of us, to do just a regular Google search and contact these businesses. And I'm not saying we go bust them, I say we educate them, bring them up to compliance, and have them do the paperwork they're supposed to do so we can regulate this. Thanks.
Just as a follow-up comment on, it seems to be more common now as you're just driving down the road, you'll see somebody with a trailer that says, I haul junk. I think that we all have code enforcement divisions, and maybe it's a reminder, if you see one of those, call that number, and then that's where the education piece comes in. Just because you have a trailer doesn't mean you're you have a business license and whatnot. I think that's one way to kind of maybe get some insight into what is exactly going on, and hopefully help curtail the problem. It's just frustrating, I guess, that people care so little about their communities that they're willing to just go throw trash everywhere. That's just not the way that I was brought up, and it's just really unfortunate.
Any other? I would agree with everything that's been said. I know that, and it's really weird that one of the things I get hit up on a lot, whether it's roads, it's a lot of the illegal dumping now, is people are seeing it. And I know that the city of Merced has done a good job with the heavy or bulky item drop-off site, but people aren't making it over there. So I wouldn't say that it's just all, unincorporated areas that are dumping and stuff. I think the cities are. You see it in the orchards, you see it all over the place, and people from the cities are going to those areas that they don't think are being watched. So I think that if staff has been given direction to bring this back so that we can really kind of look at all the options that are available to us, whether it's the ones we go back and look at that are in the agenda right now, or with some of the comments that have been made, and maybe really, I think it is right that the jurisdictions, should do some other things. Probably, I think Merced has their cleanups that I'm surprised the mayor's here and not picking up trash right now, but just kidding. But I'm just kidding. But what I'm saying is, I know that the city does a lot of good things. I know that that's been said about Los Banos and their cleanup day. I know that Fresno does something that has, I think it's 2 days a year to where people just put it on the street, and then the city of Fresno comes and picks it up.
Fresno has a whole the mayor's Beautify Fresno program where they have a whole department dedicated towards organizing big volunteer cleanups as well, and they do them. They do a lot of those as well.
Sounds like the city of Merced needs a new department. So I just think that we have to get creative about this, because just like Director Silvera said, this wasn't anything that we ever grew up with here in Merced. and you never saw it. And now you're seeing it more and more and more. And I think it's just, it's really, it's a quality of life issue, I think. So, yes.
Yeah, and I'll just say that the illegal dumping since the first of the year has exploded.
Oh, yeah.
It really has. I mean, it's just, I'll go down a road and that normally would have maybe 1 or 2 dumps on it if I drove down, and there'll be 5 or 6. So I don't know if it's doubled or tripled, but, and I don't know if it's coincided with the increase in our dump fees, that people, it's just expensive now, where it was pretty reasonable before to go to the dump and take a pickup load. And so, anyways, do you need a motion, or do we need action to?
A motion.
If I could, I just want to add too, we talk about our dump fees, but there's stuff that we accept for free at the dump.
Oh.
But they're still dumping.
Mattresses.
Mattresses,
And
yeah.
The bulky item drop-off site, if you have a city bill or your city address, you can,
100%.
yeah. Drop off there for
So this is
free.
just
It doesn't cost
laziness.
anything. Yeah, this is just disrespectful. Yeah, Director Nagy.
Thank you. I agree with most of what's been said here today, but, we don't put people in jail for doing heinous crimes. So what is the penalty for illegal dumping? And are we going to expend millions of dollars and create new departments and increase the size of government for this and impact people on fixed incomes rate that they have to pay because of the scofflaws? Because if it is, then we're just spinning our tires. We're not getting anywhere. And I would like to see something done too. I drive by Director Yanez's place outside of Turlock every day, and you never know what's going to be on that road, from a refrigerator to 20 mattresses to whatever. And we got to stop it. But, it's all of us together. Definitely. It's, you can't say, well, this is guys in the county, this is guys in the city. It's all over the place, but it's all a certain type of person too. And that's the person that needs to get caught and needs to have to pay for it.
Right, or dump it in there.
And I think that's what goes to what Darren was saying in regards to going through and looking at some of these businesses to make sure that they're the ones that are responsible.
Well, and it's not just guys that haul garbage, it's guys that are doing roofs.
Yeah, that's what,
under the table
yeah.
kind of thing. It's all those types of people. So, fence guys that come out of the woodworks after a big storm like we've had. I sell fencing, and I see these guys come in, and they're fly by night. And then they disappear after all the fences get done, and you don't see them until the next storm 2 or 3 years down the road. And you know that they're charging people to haul it off, and then you see it outside of town, but you got to prove it. So, yes.
I know that the county passed an ordinance a couple years back that if we can find 2 pieces of identifying information, listen, you have a responsibility for your trash until it gets to the landfill. So it's just they're getting smarter about it. I mean, I think you can go to South Dos Palace right now, and if it was good furniture, you could furnish a whole house with just the stuff at South Dos Palace Park, and the cleanup crews could be there on whatever day and clean it up, and wait till the next weekend and it'll be completely full again. And as far as, and I agree with you, Pat, is the taxpayers are paying for it as it is. And so to me, having the RWA participate, and if I'm talking a little bit per ton on your tonnage rate goes up, I don't know what a 10 cent more on your tonnage rate to the landfill, what kind of revenue that would be, but would help offset some of these costs. A voucher program, because we can only go what's in the public right of way. So when they just back into the orchard and dump it in the orchard, it's not, we're not going to be just going on people's public property. We stay in the or people's private property, but then you have these farmers who are now bearing the cost of it. And so I think if it has to be, everything has to be looked at, and we're paying one way or another. We're paying in quality of life. What value do you put on that? But the taxpayers are paying. You all pay taxes in this county, and it comes out of our DPW budget. which is our roads department, right? So dollars that are getting spent on cleaning up illegal dumps in the public right of way, that's less dollars that goes to fix potholes and fix roads. And so I don't have a great answer for it. And you're right. You want my answer is you go dump all that crap right back on their front yard and say, sorry about your bad luck. That would be the way you make a couple examples out of people. I know some people in Las Vegas who've done that, who've literally, they went and dumped it out there on a sheep herder's ranch. He found the address, went over, tried to have a conversation with them. They all wanted to play dumb. He got his guys, loaded in the trailer, and went and dumped it on his front yard. Nobody ever called the cops because what are they going to say? Oh, he dumped my trash back in my yard. I don't want to get there, but when we do find somebody, believe it or not, I've heard some out in Dos Palos, they see this truck driving down the road with all this stuff in the back, and the landfill's that way, and they're going that way, and they followed them around, and sure enough, that couch and everything, you catch that person, we need to make an example of them. And I know with our ordinance that we passed, at least at the county level, that fine could be up to $10,000. Depending on the severity of what you did. But the problem is catching them. They're doing it in the middle of the night. I mean, I drive the back way. You go there during the daylight hours. You don't see it. The next day, it's a night. There it is. It's out there. So I think I'll let my colleague make the motion, but I think the motion should be as something along as staff kind of take direction off the discussion that we've had here and kind of come back with some solutions and something that's viable, and maybe feather these out a little bit more to see, and then give us options on what to do.
So just go ahead, Director.
Go ahead.
I was going to just recap everything that everybody mentioned.
Before you recap, I just we have James online. He's listening. Is there anything that he would want to share with us, or just wait till staff works on it?
Thank you, Director Guerrero. I think all of the comments have been very spot on. This is definitely an issue that will require multiple facets to successfully resolve it, including education, certainly some disincentive of some sort. And Director Savari, right, if we can use the county ordinance to prosecute to the extent we can, or publicize when these incidents happen, that may help. I will say that the state of California has an illegal dumping task force, of which Kyle Loretto, our diversion manager, sits in on those sessions. He will actually be attending their statewide conference the 1st of May, and we will definitely, get as much information from that group as we can as to what jurisdictions are being successful in fighting this issue. And we will come back to this board with some proposed, different approaches and solutions, and some ideas about the cost and how we could pay for it.
So with that, I'll make a motion that we add this item to a future agenda, and that staff be given direction to take a look at some possible solutions to bring back to us.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, I'll open up for public comment on this item. Okay, seeing none, we have a motion and second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. So now we'll go back to 10A. 10A is a request to adopt the 2024 One Voice legislative platform. Mary Michael.
Mr. Chair, before we start, can I make one comment? Caltrans is leaving. I just wanted to, so as I was looking through my emails, actually, and reached out to the ag teacher out there at the school farm, he did report back to me that Caltrans actually did get out there and fix those issues on Ramus Road. And so that project, he said it's not perfect, but it's 10 times better than it was. So I just wanted to make sure we publicly said that Caltrans is doing some things. I just want to make sure he got credit for that.
It's been raining. You want 7A? No? I want 10A. Yeah. Mary Michael.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Hold on. Go ahead. Is it working?
How many times you got to thank them?
I think it's on.
I won't do it again.
All right.
Thank you. Mary Michael Rawling, Public Affairs Manager. The action before you today is to adopt the proposed 2024 One Voice legislative platform. The platform attached on page 81 of your packet reflects the policy priorities submitted and discussed by jurisdictions at delegation meetings and will serve as the guiding document for the advocacy work conducted by delegates in Washington, D.C. in May. Many of you are a part of that delegation. Thank you for your continued commitment to the program. The policies in the platform this year coalesce around the central focus of lifting up rural California through 3 general themes, those being regional transportation connectivity, public safety and well-being, and clean and safe water. The importance of these 3 areas are illustrated by the specific jurisdictional priorities listed beneath each of them. In addition, the platform contains a general provision to support earmark requests made by individual jurisdictions, providing they don't conflict with any of the other policies in the platform. Once the platform is approved by your board, the delegation will reconvene, meet 3 times before going to DC, and then have a debrief session afterwards. Both the CAC and Technical Review Board have approved staff recommendation of this platform, and Ben Goldine of Townsend Public Affairs is online. He and I are here to answer any questions you may have. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the board? Yes.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, not question, but just comment. I just want to thank Mary Michael and Ben. Nice to see you, buddy. I like the approach that we have this year. Instead of having 50 different projects little projects here, kind of narrowing it down to focus areas. I think it'll allow us to be more effective advocators when we're back in DC, and giving everybody has something in this, and we don't run into the situation where you get into a room and the intergovernmental affairs for the White House, and you only get a half hour with these folks, and then if we try to go through every project, people feel like they get left out, and none of us want to see that happen. And so I do really appreciate us kind of narrowing it down to some focus areas, and then having specific projects within those focus areas. And I think, Ben, it might make your job a little bit easier as we try to set up all these meetings and really allow us to focus in, each task force to focus in, and have time to be able to get our projects, speak to them with more than just a quick little 1-sentence blurb, but actually talk a little bit more and tell the personal story and why they're so important. So thank you for your good work on this.
Anybody else? Any comments from the public? Is there a motion?
Chair Silvera, motion to approve.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion passes.
Thank you.
So both agendas we have are a little different. So the one that is out there and then the one that's handed out and the one that's online are different agendas, but they're the same. So I said 10A because on one agenda it's 10A, but it's 7B on one agenda. So we're going to do 7B and 10B, which are the same thing. And this is a proposed agenda item for consideration regarding the role, purpose, and effectiveness of the CAC. And we have Nav again.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At the February Governing Board meeting, Director Silvera requested a future item to consider roles and purposes of effectiveness of the Citizen Advisory Committee, what we call CAC, citing ongoing challenges of filling vacancy and meeting a quorum. Per the MCAG item request policy, such requests are being placed on the next board meeting at which the governing board will consider whether there's a majority consensus to have a staff expend time on this issue. I will turn this over to Director Silvera if you want to add any further to this discussion.
No, just as we hear of the Citizens Advisory Committee, we hear sometimes that they're not able to have meetings because they don't have quorums, and really the request is to have staff pull those folks and find out are they getting value out of this? Are they getting value being on that board? And then also, are we getting value as the board of directors for MCAG? Are we getting value out of having those? And it's not to say that we are that we are or we aren't. I just want us to kind of explore it. I feel like everybody's pressed for time and has a lot of different irons in the fire, if you will, and I just want to make sure that there's value in being on these committees, and then really to kind of maybe help me help define what exactly are their roles. And I'll even go as far as, with the TRB is do we get value in it? Is that something? And it's always unique to me that, we're the folks that get to vote on these items, but the agendas come out to the TRB before they come out to us, so they're seeing, and it's not the final agenda that comes out to us. But then, it hasn't happened in quite some time, but I get calls from other members of this board wanting to talk to me about items that are coming up on our MCAG agenda, and I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about because I haven't seen one. Well, it was because their city manager saw the item at the TRB meeting and talked to them, and then it comes back to us. And so I just want those clear lines, what is everybody's role? Are the advisory committees to us? When they don't have a quorum, do they don't get to give advice? So those are the questions. That's kind of where this all stemmed from. So I'm looking for colleagues' support to have. This isn't something that has to be done overnight, but at least have staff spend some time on it, do some questioning, and figure out, okay, is the same approach that we've been using forever still working, or does that need to be modified?
Got it.
Okay. Any other comments? Yes.
Yeah, I'll just say that makes sense to me.
Okay. So this is an action item, so we'll need a motion.
Motion to have staff expend time on considering the roles, purpose, and effectiveness of the Citizens Advisory Committee and the TRB.
And you said that's for next meeting, right?
It'll be the later item.
Okay.
In the future agenda.
Okay.
We don't have to have a date specific, but to come back to us at some point.
Okay. Any comments from the public? Okay. I'll bring it back. Is there a motion? Oh yeah, we have a motion and a second. Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. All right, on to discussion items. 8A, the Central California Household Travel Survey. Ray.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? So in this item, I would like to discuss the Central California Household Travel Survey, which is pretty new. So I'll first talk about the survey in general and introduce what is a household travel survey in general and how we use it. And then we'll talk about some details about the latest Central California Household Travel Survey, especially its method, and a summary of some of the results. So the Central California Household Travel Survey is a joint work. It's a collaboration among 8 MPOs, including MCAG, and also with the collaboration with Caltrans and the Department of Housing and Community Development. So in this survey, we collect the demographic and travel patterns from the household inside these counties. It's pretty comprehensive household travel survey. So from the data set, actually, we can see very detailed of the survey result. For each survey result, we can see where they start the trip, when they start the trip, and what's the trip purpose, what's the origin, and what's the destination of the trip, and this is for the trip, and also for the demographic patterns, we also can get the sense of the result by seeing which type of household and what's the, let's say, household income, everything. So it's pretty comprehensive. And we, in this survey, utilize modern approach. I'll talk about it later for the details of the method, so that we're able to achieve more accurate and a better coverage of the households. So some background. In general, what is the household travel survey? So the household travel survey, as I mentioned, so far is still the most reliable data, most reliable up-to-date information we can get for the household travel patterns. So it includes the demographic data, as I mentioned, also include the travel data, and it's pretty detailed. For example, if we want to know a certain type of household, for example, a household of, say, 3 people living in a household, and if they are living in a single-family home, how many trips they will generate, and what type of each type of trip, how many trips they are generated each day in a typical day. So the survey result can provide that. And us, like a regional transportation planner, we heavily rely on this the survey results because we have to use it as a critical input for the travel demand model. We also need to get the result from the travel demand model, including like the vehicle miles traveled, including the air quality measurement, including the congestion levels of different type of roads. So many information actually can be acquired from the travel demand model, which is based on the travel survey inputs. So it's pretty important. And I would say a lot of our documents and funding requirements need us to have as accurate as possible the travel demand model and its results. So talking about this Central California household travel survey is different from the previous one, because previously what we use is pretty old data. It's more than decades ago. And also that data was for the entire California. So it's not well, our local household is not well represented in the previous survey. So that's why we need urgently about this latest one. So the latest one finalized in last year, and finally we're able to retrieve all this survey data, and we're working on that to get more information. So one of the critical applications I mentioned, we're going to do the update of our travel demand model, and further we update our regional transportation planning documents. It's quite different from the general California travel survey because it's pretty targeted to our local household in the Central Valley. So think about without this survey, for a typical household in, say, Merced County, sometimes because of the lower sampling rate in our county, we have to rely on the data from, say, another county, probably, say, in the Bay Area or some other counties, to assume that their travel pattern would be similar to the household in our county, which somehow could be off. So we're glad to have the Central California household survey. So in this survey, we rely on 2 advanced methods. One is we're focusing on the household trips. So basically, the survey is not like to do the survey for like random people. Well, we need to know they have to live inside the county, or say live inside 8 counties specifically. And we need to know their location of the household, and because we need to know like how many trips are generated from this household. Especially in the travel demand model, we heavily rely on the, say, the home-based trips versus non-home-based trips. So if it's home-based trips, we anticipate that the trip will be conducted out of this home and eventually coming back, right? So that's why we focusing on the household trips. And by doing so, by focusing on that, basically we call the address-based sampling. So we provide the reward to the household if they can provide like the trip details for a typical day for all the household members, they'll get a gift card, a bigger gift card, or if they can just provide their own travel pattern in a typical day, they'll get a smaller gift card. So again, because we're providing gift cards, it's expensive. So the total,
How much is big and how much is small?
so for example, if a household have say 5 people, and each of them will have some trips in a typical day. So one of their members will provide all the trips in the entire household in the typical day. So they will get a bigger.
How much money was the gift card?
I cannot recall precisely, but I guess it's like, I need to check back, but it's roughly like 50 or 100.
Okay.
So this is one method. We're focusing on the household trips. Another is we call it oversampling. So oversampling is actually a good thing because we are trying to balance different areas that historically it may not be fully surveyed or very hard to survey. For example, in some specific rural areas or in some specific area with, say, newer immigrants or with some certain language spoken. So in these certain areas, basically we'll generate some, we call it weights, to give them higher weights for this area, so the final result of the survey would have more balanced results. So these are 2 major, we say, modern method for the survey. So some summary of the survey results. So in general, for the entire Central Valley, there are more than 7,000 households surveyed. And of course, as I mentioned, we add weights to different type of household. So the weighted household will be even more than that. And we also have like almost 20,000 persons surveyed. So definitely we're more interested in Merced specifically. So there are some other data regarding Merced versus the total. The first is a targeted number of surveyed household. So the actual completed one will be it's higher than the target, which is a good thing. Same for the entire valley. And similar to the entire valley, in Merced County, in general, each person will generate 4 trips per day. This is by average, of course. And for households, the trip rate will be a little bit higher than the average in all the 8 counties. So regarding travel mode, basically, which means what type of vehicles or what type of travel mode they are using. So dominantly, people use vehicles. And we can see a little bit higher percentage in Merced County than in general. But in general, the entire Central Valley have pretty high percentage of vehicle trips. And regarding different trip purposes, Merced have similar patterns, but some of them are a little bit higher. For example, the pickup drop-off trips, and also the school-related trips are higher than the other counties in the Central Valley. So the last one is pretty interesting observation is that the telework frequency. So if you see like 5 days a week, which basically means a full telework, and if you see the 6 to 7 days, it also means full telework. So the full telework mode in Merced is actually the highest among all these 8 counties. So of course because we have very huge data set, we can get a lot more information rather than this summary. So we're still working on that to update our next version of the travel demand model at this moment. Any questions, comments?
There any questions or comments? Yes.
Who funded the survey?
So the funding source was I believe the total amount would be 1.5 million, and about half was from Caltrans, and the rest from the 8 MPOs, including MCAG. But because of the population, we only provided a fraction of them, so it's a good deal for us.
Okay, and then you said that the benefit of doing a Central Valley survey versus the total state. What do those numbers look like compared to our valley numbers compared to the states? Was it better for us or worse for us?
So I would say definitely some of the results are different, and we have already generated a summarized table to generate the trip rates for our county, because we need to do the update of the model. So at this moment, we can see if we have two different results. If only one of them is correct, I would prefer to say that our latest survey would be better.
So we're going to do another survey?
Oh, this is the latest survey we're talking about. The Central Valley survey is so far the best to use. We are going to use this to update our model.
So we don't have that answer yet then. Where do we compare to the state? Because I feel like we would get screwed over if we looked at us as part of a statewide survey because of, folks that travel over in the Bay Areas and the Southern Californias of the world and how long they're in trips and how far they have to go and whatnot. So I would think that it would be, I'm glad that we looked at just the 8 Valley counties. It scares me a little bit with San Joaquin and Kern on the other end, because the San Joaquins go north to Sacramento and the Kerns go south to LA. A better representation of what the valley truly is would be to cut those 2 off and look at 6 counties, but that's just my humble opinion.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Are there any comments from the public? Okay, thank you very much. And we'll move on to 11B, which is a draft regional active transportation plan update.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon, directors. So this item is to present you with the draft regional active transportation plan. We've been working with local jurisdiction staff and stakeholders for a little over a year and a half to develop the regional ATP, and this plan is intended to guide efforts to improve and enhance walking and biking throughout the entire Merced County region. The regional ATP can also serve as a resource when prioritizing improvements or competing for funding sources, such as the statewide active transportation plan. The draft regional ATP was released for public review and comment on March 1st, and we're accepting public comments through March 29th. And we have Carrie McNichol with Fair and Peers here today. She kindly made the trip to be here in person, and she's going to give a short presentation of the plan, and then afterwards we can take any comments or answer any questions. So I will hand it over to Carrie.
No, I get to talk about active transportation this time. So Carrie McNichol with Fair and Peers. I'm an associate planner. It's based here in the Central Valley, and very excited to be here talking to you guys about the draft regional active transportation plan. So just going to walk you briefly through what's in the document. You've got, I think, a big old hard copy of it in your packets this month. But the basic components are an overview of the existing conditions, the engagement that was done to connect with the communities of Merced County, a toolkit of best practices to help guide your jurisdictions moving forward as they seek to implement these and other projects. Of course, a list of those projects and then some guidance on implementation. So for existing conditions, we really focused on what some of the issues were today and what the experience is for people walking, biking, and rolling, using mobility devices, things of that nature in each community today. We took a look at collision data, knowing that safety is really kind of one of our underlying driving goals for this process, as well as demographic information and how all of that mapped against the existing plans and policies that we had from each of your jurisdictions. So this did include the unincorporated county as well as the incorporated jurisdictions, with a much lighter touch on Gustine, who had recently completed their own active transportation plan. We spent a lot of time in partnership with the community. Obviously, at a regional scale, that can be challenging, but tried to connect with members of each jurisdiction. There is a project website that is still live today, at which we hosted a community survey and an interactive web map so people could tell us specifically where they had challenges. We did a series of stakeholder focus groups with community service organizations, schools, transit providers, the local agency staff, as well as pop-up events and targeted engagement throughout the region. We were able to present to the Merced BPAC, I think, a total of 3 times, as well as the MCAG committees, and hosted virtual workshops, one last month, and we have 2 upcoming next week, which I will highlight shortly. The Best Practices Toolkit is really, as I mentioned, intended to be a guide for how the state of practice is evolving for how we plan for people walking and biking. These are our most vulnerable road users. They're out there in the road. They don't have the protection of a car around them to protect them if something goes wrong. So we really want to think about how we can get the best possible outcomes and how what we're doing aligns with what's recommended currently by groups like the Federal Highway Administration, the state of California, and other entities. So there's quite a bit of information in that chapter, and this was responsive to feedback we heard from agency staff that they really wanted to kind of know what they should be looking at moving forward as they build out these projects and as others are identified in the future. To develop the projects and the recommendations that are in the plan, it really was a summary of all kind of those previous things. So really starting with community feedback and what was, has previously been vetted and discussed throughout the region, feedback from your staff, as well as identifying ways to make connections that are going to be suitable for people of all ages and all abilities. So not just the spandex crowd, but the mom trying to get her kids to school, and the high school student trying to get to his classes and things like that. While we have some great biking and walking facilities throughout the county, I think in the presentation we saw our walk trip percentage is higher here than elsewhere in the valley, which is great. There are still some gaps and some opportunities to upgrade what we have already, so really trying to do that and link destinations. Each community has been provided with a map of network recommendations that include those new and upgraded facilities, as well as crossing and intersection enhancements, and then a project list provided in both map and table format, all of the data of which will be available for your individual jurisdictions moving forward. We do have an addendum to the plan that will be up on the website shortly, which also includes project level costs at a planning level for each item based on current year kind of unit costs to help guide that moving forward. So for implementation, the projects have been prioritized. Yeah.
Go ahead.
So that was interesting seeing some of that. Now, was there anything done about connecting communities?
So we did not look as in depth about the connections between communities, in part because that did not come up as high of a priority for in the community survey and in the community feedback that we did, with a couple of exceptions for communities, say like Atwater and Merced.
Atwater, Merced, yeah, there's been a lot of discussions.
Because it's close enough that that is actually a doable trip, and I saw 3 people on bikes on Santa Fe Road driving between the 2 towns just this afternoon.
Santa Fe is not a safe place.
No, I would not do it. But people do out of necessity, right? And there was a previous study that we could point to and pull from for that, so that is reflected in the plan. Yeah.
Go ahead.
I found an error in your report, though. Just on page 147, you have the city of Merced, and they copied and pasted the city of Las Banis's recommended intersection change or spot improvement projects. The city of Merced, they use the city of Las Banis's again.
They want to help you out in Los Banos, I guess.
There you go.
Thank you for catching that. We'll make sure that that's rectified, that we had missed that one. Feel free to send me any others. So it is a draft. We're working on catching all of those things, which is partly why we're here today. So as I was saying before, we have prioritized the projects to align with funding criteria, particularly the Caltrans ATP call for projects, which is the primary state funding source. My note there says the call is next week, but it really is either today or tomorrow, depending on the CTC action. So that call will be live. It's highly competitive, but I think with the projects in this plan, and attention that is being paid by the state to communities like Merced County, there's a good chance if anyone is applying for us to get some funding into our county. So I mentioned the cost estimates. We also have additional funding sources there, and some framework and documentation on kind of how we can track progress over time, if that's something that's of value to your individual jurisdiction and at the regional level as well. I mentioned the virtual public meetings. So we have 2 coming up. One is next Wednesday from noon to 1 during the lunch hour, and one will be Thursday evening from 6 to 7 p.m. I'll be quite honest, we've had pretty light registration for these so far, so we would appreciate any help in getting the word out about them. And MCAG will be doing a push through all of their channels as well. We've communicated that the draft plan is out to a list of, I think, over 100 stakeholders, as well as each agency and interest parties that we've collected throughout the plan process, and have been collecting those comments and will do so through the end of the month. The project website is there at the bottom of the screen, and I believe a similar version is in your packet as well. So that does have the draft plan hosted, and we're excited to get additional feedback and take any questions that you may have.
Are there any questions? Any? Go ahead.
Yeah, just we just got our travel plan right in the previous presentation. Bike or e-bike is 0.2% in Merced County, right? So they don't work, right? People don't trust letting their youth ride on the streets, and I don't blame them. It seems like when they're not protected, because Class 1, but when they're off-site, like we have a bike path, or the city of Merced has a bike path that runs up and down the creek. That's highly used. Right, the bike path that goes out to the UC, you would think because of the students. But anyways, so is there consideration for, hey, let's, instead of requiring bike paths on all new streets, let's take that money and pull it and make a protected bike path somewhere. Is that possible?
Yeah, I mean, I think part of that comes down to local priority and how you want to move forward with implementation, and we identify both some of those bigger, more comprehensive, and also more expensive type projects like those paths and separated facilities. We see the preference for those, and especially on our roads where we do have a lot of ag equipment, we have a lot of trucks, we have heavy vehicles. You just want to separate those users as much as you can, right? So we have those, as well as trying to improve where we can some of the lower hanging fruit, neighborhood streets that maybe just need a little bit of traffic calming to make them more comfortable, or slow down speeding, where we really don't want it to happen anyway. For some of those necessity trips and, the people that just need to be able to get, around their neighborhood from their house to their school. So we have kind of both ends, I think, in there. Yeah.
Anybody else? Are there any comments from the public? Okay, I just want to point out that she did say walking and rolling, and I thought that was pretty funny. So just want to, all right. With that, thank you. Oh, sorry.
Gonna sing us out here, so thank you.
Sorry, just really briefly, I just wanted to say regarding the timeline, so we do plan to come back to you next month to adopt the plan, and then after that, we're hoping that each jurisdiction would adopt the plan on a local level too. That's all I have. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You made the show. You're in the presentation. Did you see that? You are in the draft plan.
All right, 8C, draft fiscal year 2024-25 overall program, work program and budget, NAV.
Thank you. It's that time of year, budgets. So as you know, MCAG wears a lot of different hats. We have an MPO, we have the bus, yards, along with regional waste. So today we'll be talking about, the focus of budget is on the MPO. Before I move forward, there is an error in my staff report. I don't think Director Silvera caught it, so. So on page 248, instead of saying draft budget 23-24, it should say 24-25, and then that $5.5 million is transposed. It should have been $5,059,000 instead of 5.5. But the actual decrease of 1.6 is correct. It's just that it's all Word documents, so it got kind of transposed. But on that, I'll let Elizabeth take over the budget presentation.
Good catch, Nav. Good catch.
Thank you. So as Nav mentioned, this is the budget for our transportation functions. You all know that there are the multiple agencies under MCAG. I would also just kind of add that this is the budget that we present to Caltrans and Federal Highways. So it doesn't include things like advocacy. So this is a very formal process, and Caltrans and Federal Highways and the Federal Transportation Administration review this budget that we're putting together, and that's a lot of why it looks the way it does. So overall, some of our mandated work, we essentially have two major functions, programming and planning, which you'll hear about a lot. Those first 5 items up there are our funding programs that you guys know about. CMAQ, you'll hear us say, air quality program. Carbon reduction program is new this year. We had a call for projects for it along with our CMAQ. We have a program called RSTP, and that's where we're really a pass-through for streets and roads funding for your agencies. Transportation Development Act, you guys passed that through as well through LTF you hear about. We did apportionments in January for the agencies. SB1, local partnership program funds, those come to us as the sales tax authority as kind of a matching bonus for being a self-help county. So those are some of our primary bits of funding that we manage. On our planning activities, just some highlights: regional transportation planning, our annual unmet needs transit process, that's a big requirement for us under state law. The next 2, air quality planning and transportation modeling, those are probably our core functions as the federal MPO, is to implement the modeling that Ray was talking about earlier, and showing that we're meeting our air quality requirements. And just kind of because I was listening to the modeling discussion earlier, it's good for us to have our own information, because our 0.2, or whatever that number was for bicycling, is probably lower than other areas in the state. And they're wanting us to show how we are improving and changing, right? So we don't want to, check ourselves against, someone that's not ourselves. So it's really about getting accuracy so that we can measure our own change. So that's a big part of what our modeling and air quality is. We also do regional housing planning and we do a lot of coordination statewide, obviously, like rail is huge right now, thinking about high-speed rail coming, and goods movement and freight and inland ports and all these things. So tasks from 23-24, some of them are still closing out, some of them you've already seen. Unmet transit needs, we completed that, I think, January. Our electric vehicle readiness plan was adopted a few months ago as well. You're seeing off and on our FTIP, Federal Transportation Improvement Program, and its amendments. We're undergoing an audit right now for the Transportation Development Act. It will be done and presented to you by the end of this fiscal year. We do transportation performance management, which is federally required, and you just heard about our Regional Active Transportation Plan. We're also carrying over some multi-year projects, the housing element and the local road safety plan, and the regional transit coordination study between TJPA and UC Merced. So I expect those to all finish up in the first half of next fiscal year, carrying over. Some other big projects, when I go through this slide, I'm like, wow, that's a lot. Good thing we have like a couple new planning staff, because that's a lot of new projects. Where we want to start a project called the Merced Regional Multimodal Access Plan, which we like to call Mr. MAP. I didn't even have the acronym up there. But it's just looking at, integrating transportation, because to us, 99 is important. We're also going to have high-speed rail. We're also talking about active transportation. Let's look at it all together. We also received a grant for our Transportation Network Vulnerability Assessment. It's a climate change related grant. We just released the RFP this month, so we'll be working on that in 24-25. MCAG, as the planning agency, we're helping fund the YARTS Short Range Transit Plan. There are other contributions to that plan, but there's a contribution from the planning team as well. our coordinated social services transit plan, federally required plan that will be starting this year. It looks a lot at not so much the transit agencies, but the non-emergency medical and those kind of services. There's actually quite a lot in the county, and about how to coordinate them for everyone in the county. We'll be doing our public participation plan update. A health and environmental justice analysis. That's grant funded, and it'll also help inform our regional transportation plan. I know this is a long list. The planning team will also be working with TJPA to do kind of a bus stop assessment. That'll probably be a 2-year plan, but there's been a lot of interest from your agencies, from TJPA, during the MED needs process about where bus stops are and how people can access them, talking about flag stops or safely pulling over and things like that. So we want to do help TJPA with the bus stop assessment. We're also proposing a transportation safety program. There's been a lot of interest. We've had these technical advisory committee meetings on our local road safety plan, and we hear a lot from public safety, from school districts, et cetera, about some of the issues. There are some that are engineering-based issues, right? Bad intersection design, but a lot are about people speeding. That's probably one of the bigger reasons. And there are other potential safety program items that MCAG can help fund. So we're proposed to do that next year. And then the adoption of our travel model. It was last updated in 2015, so it's a big, it's a big task and undertaking, and that'll be big for us next year. So the budget total, it decreased by 25% from the prior year, and the vast majority of that decrease is the multi-jurisdictional housing element. So MCAG is managing the contract for all of the agencies, and that contract is over $1 million, and it should be done this summer, so that's like the biggest change in the budget by far. Also, the salaries and benefits increasing by 4%. There's a proposed COLA, and that would also cover expected merit increases. Professional services decreased by 46%, and that is essentially the consultant services for some of our projects, but that multi-jurisdictional housing element, that was the big decrease. Fixed assets decreased, and that was essentially, we had a little over, it's in the next table, but 400-some thousand for like a remodeling in our office, and we're going to split that over 2 years, and we're still looking at what that remodel might look like in the office.
Before we move
This
forward.
is an old PowerPoint.
Before we move forward,
PowerPoint.
this PowerPoint was actually corrected. It's the wrong PowerPoint. Director Silvera, it's not 6.3, it should have been $5 million.
5059.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is the wrong PowerPoint. This slide is the wrong PowerPoint. Just wanted to point it out. But before we move forward, does anybody have any questions?
I was wondering about that. Thanks.
So is this slide, that's for the rest of us, and then the corrected one's for him?
No, I apologize, Director Pereira, but I know Director Silvera likes to point things out, but everything else is correct. It's just that number. The reason why it was in blue, it was an old PowerPoint that we were going to update, and the new one didn't make it to this board meeting. But before we move forward, does anybody have any questions with what we're working on and what we accomplished over to this fiscal year?
Any questions?
I don't want to look at Pat.
We still have a
Pat has
couple more.
question.
We still have a couple more
Yeah.
slides with a little more detail on these. Those increase and decrease percentages.
That's correct. Yeah. Go ahead. Next slide.
I'll move forward because there's some more slides on that. Okay. Just a quick description of some of our primary revenue sources. Federal funding, we call it PL. We have funding called 5303 from the Transit Administration, and Complete Streets funding, also federal. A lot of grant funding for planning, SB1. We have planning, programming, and monitoring funds that come through the state for project development and project delivery activities, and funding to administer the Transportation Development Act, and also for planning purposes for MCAG. So here is the revenue table overall. So in the first section there, you can see some of our federal funding sources. If you go, it's the fourth line down, if everyone can see that, housing planning. That was the biggest change year to year with that contract. And there were multiple plans and studies. The multi-jurisdictional housing element was $1 million contract, but there were other housing studies in the REAP program you've heard about that'll be finishing up. So that's the biggest change in the budget there. Most of them are pretty similar. And here's the expenditures table. I'm happy to go between them if anyone wants to look at them that way. But yeah, that shows again kind of how the revenues happened and where the difference is. Professional services primarily, fixed assets went down by about 200,000. So that's where we are on this budget. And those are all the tables. Happy to take any questions that you might have.
Okay, any questions?
On all the, if you go back a few slides, all the different studies that we're doing, too many to name. Like, how many of those would you say are ones that we actually want to do, that that as MCAG we've said, hey, this is something we want to do, versus how many of those are mandated that we have to do? Rough percentage would be
I mean, we want to do the things we have to do also, but no, I'm kidding. Okay, so the first two.
That wasn't a great answer, by the way. It was.
The first two, the multimodal access plan and the network vulnerability assessment, were both grants that we applied for and were awarded. The multimodal access plan was really like me and Stacy saying, there's all these things going on. How do we coordinate them? YART's short range transit plan is required every few years. We're helping them on that. The coordinated social services plan, federally required. We have to do that. So is the public participation plan, also a federal requirement. The health and environmental justice analysis is funded with grant funds, but we are required to do that analysis for our RTP. So we're using grant funds to do it a little bit early ahead of our RTP. Let's see, the bus stop assessment is just a project with TJPA that they needed, not necessarily mandated. And the safety program is proposed with new grant funds, not necessarily required. And the travel demand model is required.
4 out of 5.
I know it's a mix, yeah.
Okay. Very good. I'm glad that we're done with the housing part, right? Because that's going to give you all kinds of
I
time.
almost said I hope so, but I shouldn't be that excited.
Yeah, I know. But but then it gives you, you actually have some time to do the stuff that we're required to do.
Yes, and I mean, I hope that we get through the REAP 2.0 and then figure out, how.
Now, the word on the street is the state's going to cut the funding for that. So if they cut the funding, we'll just send them a letter saying, until you fund us again, we're not doing anything. All agreed? Perfect. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? Any comments or questions from the public? Okay. Nev?
So next month, we'll just bring a summary, just summarizing what we went over today. And then, yes, sir, with the corrections.
Okay. Thank you. Next, we have the Joint Powers Authority. This is adopting a resolution 2024-321-01, approving the TJPA Innovative Clean Transit. Jose Perez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to start off, we had expertise help on this project. Stantec Consultant Services played a crucial role and assisted Merced County TJPA with this, developing a zero emission rollout plan. It's a strategic planning document. It outlines a comprehensive strategy for a full transition to zero emission fleet by 2040. It was a very collaborative effort. We worked very closely, all levels of staff at TJPA with Stantec to develop this plan. And online we have Ian Lowell with Stantec. He's going to give us a quick overview of our zero emission rollout plan.
Before we move forward, I just wanted to make sure that this was mandated by the state. It wasn't something that we wanted to do. So just making it known.
I'm a transit advisory analyst with Stantec. Can everybody see my screen? Yes, great. I'm happy to be here, and as Nav pointed out, yes, this is a state-mandated rollout plan. The presentation that I'm going to give you is outlined here, kind of talk about that state mandate, talk about some of the key findings from the existing conditions report, our modeling methodology and results, the ICT ZEB rollout plan itself, facility concepts that support that zero emission bus rollout plan, and then some time for discussion. First off, project recap. The Innovative Clean Transit Regulation came from CARB, and it mandates all small transit agencies, all transit agencies within California to transition to zero emission by 2040. The outline of this report is on the right side, that section description, and it really goes through all the different operating pieces that go into a zero emission rollout plan. You know, a lot of the aspects that an agency like TJPA will have to deal with as they move from fossil fuel to a zero emission technology. A little bit more about this ICT mandate, as I said, requires transit agencies to start purchasing zero emission buses in 2026. That starts out as 25% purchase requirement, and then by 2028 it moves to 100% of bus purchases need to be zero emission, and that supports a 100% transition by 2040. There is a board approval requirement that we are taking care of right now. TJPA obtained an extension from CARB earlier, and under the requirements as they are now, there are some exemptions that exclude cutaways, motor coaches, and articulated buses. There's also exemptions that are case by case depending on the feasibility of vehicles on the market, challenges to implementing them, as well as some fiscal constraints.
Ian, can you explain what Altoona testing is?
Absolutely. Altoona testing is testing of buses by the federal government to make sure that they are up to safety requirements. So there are buses on the market that may not be Altoona tested, and those non-Altoona tested vehicles are not eligible for FTA funding. So if, as an agency, TJPA wanted to go out on a limb and buy those non-Altoona tested vehicles, they would have to pay for them 100% without federal funds. So it's really a way of saying these vehicles do the mileages they claim, they are safe to transport people, and there's some other kind of regulations, including emission testing for fossil fuel vehicles and so on. Some key findings from our existing conditions report really points out that TJPA operates a wide range of vehicles on their fixed route and demand response services. These vehicles run pretty far distances between 125 and 400 miles per day for a fixed route. So that's quite a distance for vehicles to operate. And similarly for demand response, those vehicles operate anywhere from very little, 0.5 to 253 miles per day. That presents significant challenges for zero emission bus implementation, like the operating ranges, and as well, TJPA faces facility space constraints. There are significant geometric space constraints within the facility to add the necessary charging equipment that may present challenges going forward. I'm going to give a brief primer on the different types of zero emission bus technologies, propulsion technologies. The first is battery electric buses, BEBs. This is a propulsion that comes directly from the electricity stored within the batteries on the bus, and refueling occurs through recharging. So these are your traditional, or I guess, these are electric vehicles that we are more familiar with nowadays. The other type of zero emission buses are hydrogen fuel cell buses. Propulsion occurs through a hydrogen fuel cell that takes hydrogen and turns it into electricity on board the bus. So instead of a large bank of batteries, there are tanks filled with hydrogen that are refueled at a station. Some considerations for battery electric buses is they are a little bit cheaper and more widely used kind of across the transit space, and there's more experience with them, whereas hydrogen fuel cells offer longer ranges, but there are fewer Altoona-tested vehicles on the market, and they are somewhat more expensive. Our modeling process takes into account those different types of vehicles in that bus specification section, and that also includes some different loads that the bus will experience outside of propulsion, so heating, cooling. It also includes aerodynamic drag. So kind of the how the bus is designed influences how far it can go. We use that with driving cycles, which is going to be the terrain, stop and go traffic. So all those things that are very specific to Merced and the surrounding areas that TJPA services. Another aspect is passenger loads. So when there's more people on the bus, a heavier load, you have less efficiency. So we take that into account. Ambient conditions is really temperature, environment. That factors into our ZEB model. And then finally, elevation and topography are an important aspect. Fortunately, y'all have relatively flat service areas for a good portion, but it still is an important aspect to consider. And all of this is modeled at the route, block, and vehicle level. So it takes a full consideration of TJPA's operations. Our summary of modelings, modeling is shown on the top, which is the fixed route, and the bottom, which is demand response. In terms of fixed route, a maximum of 46% of fixed route operations can be served with battery electric buses currently. That's under optimal conditions, so low passenger load as well as good weather conditions. That rate increases to 82% with fuel cell, so significantly better under utilizing fuel cell buses. And as I kind of said, the ideal conditions increase. Battery electric operations for demand response up to 60%, and almost all of demand response service could be operated by fuel cell vehicles, but the aforementioned Altoona tested demand response is operated with cutaways, and there are no Altoona tested cutaways with hydrogen propulsion. So a bit of a mixed bag, but it does seem like fuel cell electric is going to serve much more of TJPA's service. All those considerations came into the technology portfolio and the technology discussion. This is definitely a big part of where we worked with Jose and Nav to identify the best route forward for TJPA. And that route was actually a mixed fleet of battery electric and fuel cell vehicles. This is in part because TJPA already operates battery electric vehicles. They were an early adopter of this technology, which plays an important role in the next slide. Because how CARB sets up its regulation and sticking to the mandate is that they give out credits for agencies that were early adopters of technologies and tried them out. So that enables TJPA not to purchase any more zero emission buses until 2029. That is seen here in the future bus procurements. This chart is a technology composition, so a fleet composition based on technology. You see in 2041, that's the first year that 100% of operations are done by zero emission buses. Fuel cells are, or pardon me, fossil fuel vehicles are phased out based on their useful life. This is part of the ICT mandate. And the last diesel procurement will be in 2027, and the last fossil fuel procurement in 2031. That's because of some gas vehicles that are exempt longer, so we are able to put off that transition. The mixed fleet composition starts to play in 2030 when a hydrogen fueling station will come online to support the fueling of hydrogen buses. And as I mentioned, the fleet will be 100% zero emission by 2040, primarily with hydrogen buses at that point, but some electric buses will remain in service utilizing the infrastructure that's already been, or that's planned to be installed. The installation of that technology is an important part of this plan. So battery electric charging equipment is needed, currently for the buses that TJPA operates, as well as the planning for more charging infrastructure and the installation of a hydrogen fueling facility. That happens in a two-phased approach. The first one is charging equipment to fuel the immediate need of 15 150 kilowatt chargers and 650 kilowatt chargers, as well as laying conduit for phase two. And phase two is that hydrogen fueling, as well as additional 150 kilowatt chargers.
So Ian, if I could jump in real quick on this one, the one that's in the red is going to be phase one, and the reason that's for charging the current buses plus what's being going to be received. The one that's in yellow in the middle area, we're running conduit just in case if we, technology changes or whatever, but we don't want to rip up the asphalt 3 times just to put the infrastructure in. So we're going to do it one time, but there's not going to be a charging station in the middle. We're just going to run the infrastructure in case technology changes, but which I don't know. It doesn't look like it. And then on the far right-hand side, left-hand side, where the red box is, that's where the hydrogen facility is going to go. The way that hydrogen facility is going to be they're going to be trucked in on containers, and then the container is going to be in the middle, and they're going to be hooked up like gas pumps, and the buses just pull up, fuel up. It takes like 20 minutes to fill one bus, and then they're off. So that is why we're doing a two-phase approach. Hydrogen, the technology, and the buses, there is one company out there right now. They're not very reliable. So we're waiting for other manufacturers to come out with buses so that we can test, see which one's more efficient and better in range, and then we'll put a hydrogen facility at our current operation. Ian, can we go to the next slide? Oh, does anybody have a question about this? All right, Ian, can we go to the next slide?
Absolutely. Important part of the ICT regulation is deploying zero-emission buses in disadvantaged communities. Within Merced County, there's a lot of disadvantaged communities, so any routes that zero-emission buses are deployed on will satisfy this requirement. The next part is potential funding sources. There's quite a few funding sources that are available at the federal and the state and local level. I think an important one is the low-no emissions program. A lot of these are competitive, and so it's important to stay on top of that, but also identify when and for what projects it's most valuable to pursue. Transition is happening all across the country, so it's important to recognize that with competitive grants, it's important to really go after the right ones. And state and local level, TJPA has already pursued or taken advantage of HVIP, so that hybrid and zero emission truck bus voucher incentive program, as well as the TIRSIP, so transit and intercity rail capital programs, successfully. And finally, the ICT rollout plan is a living document and states the challenges that the agency experiences in transitioning to zero emission vehicles. For TJPA, facility upgrades are a big one. There's a lot that goes into adding these upgrades to ensure that the buses can operate successfully. So support in terms of capital and construction are very important. Limited fleet options, as we talked, Altoona testing. Demand response is something that needs technology improvements. The approach that TJPA has is one that maximizes the opportunities of improved technology, enables the flexibility of utilizing new technologies and not locking themselves into something that is maybe not the best or the most efficient for delivering service. And all of that is summed up in significant capital expenditures. These buses are more expensive, as well as the infrastructure for facility upgrades, as we talked about. So in conclusion, this is, as we mentioned, mandated by the state, but it offers a lot of opportunity for TJPA to deliver high quality service.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions? Director Pereira.
Yeah, could you go back to slide 7, please? I think there was an error that Scotty missed. So down at the bottom where it says passenger load, so to the right of that, we don't have high passenger load. So could you change that to low passenger load and no passenger load for your next presentation?
Yeah, I think we look at a success rate. So low passenger loads with zero emission is a more successful option for maintaining consistent service.
Can you go to slide 10? I couldn't even get a chuckle out of my colleagues here. Jeez.
It's late in the day.
That's one of my pet peeves is we spend all this money running buses around with 2 people on them. One's the driver, and it's just frustrating for me. But anyways, slide 10, please.
I thought you say your pet peeves. Laugh at your joke.
Yeah, well, that's true too. So it looks like the plan is to be hydrogen fuel cell buses, but really not significantly until 2036 or 37. Is that who put together this goal? Is that our goal, or is that somebody else's goal, or is that best practices?
This is really focused on 2 things. One, they're both part of the ICT regulation. So that 2040 deadline, as well as the requirement that you can't retire vehicles early, or that you shouldn't be retiring vehicles early. So this is something that maximizes a vehicle's useful life while still adhering to that 2040 deadline.
Okay, I'm happy to see the blue. Right, I think hydrogen fuel cells are our answer. I don't think electric vehicles are. I have yet to see a zero emission vehicle. And have you seen one?
I think you have to look at how electricity is deployed, and when we're looking at timelines, there is potential that your grid does become 100% zero emission. But currently there is a mix where we're transitioning.
Right.
And that's
I guess, so I looked at one of the future slides where we're doing the layout, right? And we're spending a ton of money to do electric charging stations. So do we have to do that, or can we save that money and end up putting it into the hydrogen fuel cell and working towards that technology sooner rather than later? I guess that's ultimately my real question.
I think it's important to recognize that this technology is really developing. As we stated towards the end of the presentation, there are no hydrogen vehicles that serve some of TJPA's service requirements. So ensuring that there is a certain amount of flexibility maintains a potential for big jumps in energy storage, energy transfer, and the overall improvement of zero emission buses, or pardon me, battery electric buses. Hydrogen fuel cell, it seems to be a distance winner, but we're not sure where things are going to improve on both ends.
So you're saying that we don't know if we're going to have hydrogen fuel cell buses available on time, so we've got to go electric first and then switch? Is that
I think it's important to recognize that the early adoption of electric, it makes it something that is known, is something that we can implement now, while we give
I get that. I'm just
TPA a little bit of time to make sure that the decision is
just
is
asking
correct.
for your professional opinion, right? Is do we have to wait or not? It's not. I mean, we understand the industry and where it's headed and the timing. I'm just, if you're more involved in it than I am, is there a chance that we can beat a hydrogen fuel cell and not have to spend all the money on electricity? If there's not, it's a yes or no question, really.
I think how this plan is structured is really good for hydrogen, right? It gives CJPA as much time as possible. We're using those credits from existing battery electric purchases to push off any zero emission purchases for quite a few years. So it's successful in ensuring that hydrogen is the best choice. The red section of this, the facility modifications, is things that are required for current purchases. The orange is that second phase 150 kilowatt chargers. The conduit, laying the conduit for phase 2 is something that enables operationally a more successful addition in phase 2, but it doesn't mandate it.
Mean to go down a
Doesn't
rabbit
make it.
hole. I understand what you're saying.
So Director Perra, I hear what you're saying, and the reason why we're buying the hydrogen buses later, that's when our diesel buses are going to start retiring around that time as well. So that's that's one of the reasons why. And like you said, we have 9 years till 2029. We have credit, so we won't. The only time we'll purchase electric buses if we use federal money, and that's grants. We're not going to use our local funds to pay for these electric buses. That not going to say. Everybody already knows they're not efficient.
I should ask you, not him.
Director Silvera.
Thank you. Just a comment is I appreciate all the work and I appreciate your optimism, Ian, on how eventually we're going to get there. And I do appreciate the fact that it shows us potential funding sources, but the one thing it doesn't show us is what it's going to cost. And that's the troubling part. You're asked to, and I get it, we have to, by law, we have to approve a plan that has some dates set out in the future that we don't know, and then the state's going to realize they can't meet those goals because they want to push so many vehicles to electric, and the electric infrastructure isn't enough to be able to sustain it, so they're going to kick goals down the road. But it's just, gasoline is still, or fossil fuel vehicles are still the cheapest game in town. And when you're not when you have long distances to go, albeit we're flat, but it gets hot here, it gets on the colder side here, and there's all these different programs out there. But when you boil it back down to, when we see buses, and I look at it all the time, my colleague here has caused me to, whenever I see a bus, I try to see how many people are on it. And I can just tell you, if you're in Merced and you catch the right route, you'll actually see a bus that has some people on it. In my travel across the county, I see a bus, and you're lucky to see 2 on there counting the driver. There's a lot of ones, and so I guess it's just the cost per rider. When you look at this, is again, you're not gonna convince me that we're actually saving the environment, right? The amount of money we're spending in, to put into this infrastructure. These aren't cheap decisions, and I appreciate the fact that we're putting conduit in the ground so we don't have to rip up asphalt later. It's cheaper to do it on the front end than the back end, but it's still just frustrating, and it causes me to want to vote no on even this plan. Not that it's a good plan, not that you all didn't do a lot of work on trying to show a path forward here, but at the end of the day, there's so many unknowns, and it's kind of like, this is how they do it. Well, you agreed to that plan. You get back in 2024 at a meeting, you guys agreed to this plan, and really, you want me to agree to a plan that doesn't tell me how much it's going to cost us. And I get it. There's because I look at every one of those funding ideas you have there, state, local, federal. Guess what? Pay for every one of those. We pay for every one of those. Those are taxpayer dollars.
Director Silvera, this is a working document, so we're not held to going down this rabbit hole. It's just a document to submit to CARB to say, hey, we have a plan in place. If technology changes and they say, there's manufacturers out there that are going away from electric already, right? Or they went bankrupt. But this is just a plan for us to tell state, hey, we got a plan, but this is a working document. If tomorrow, there's a
nuclear fission.
Yeah. Then that will just be integrated to this plan. So this is not
put an asterisk on the bottom that says, unless we can't afford it. Just put that right on the bottom of every page, says asterisk, unless we can't afford it. Because again, they do this all the time at the state. They ask us to agree to a plan, right? And it's kind of like, well, you really don't have a say in it. You have to, because if you want to be eligible for this funding or that funding, you had to agree to the plan. But we're agreeing to a plan that not all the facts are known yet. Yep. We don't know. It could be a mad rush, and in the next 2 years, hydrogen gets approved by whatever that place is that the federal government says, what is it? Altoona approves hydrogen, and then electric just becomes dead. I don't know. It's frustrating, but that's another discussion for another day. Thank you for the report, and I can appreciate all the work that you put into putting this document together.
Thank you, Director Silvera. We were at a training a couple months ago in Fresno, and it was just local transit agencies, and we had great training from Sunline, agency from Sunline. And the professor at the training was basically said, what CARB did with this regulation is basically made transit a captured industry, and that's what we really are. We're a captured industry that has to eventually transition to zero emissions, and they're going to let everyone else, off the hook.
All right. Any other questions or comments? I think. Oh.
Just on the ridership question, I think there's with the number we're trending back. The ridership numbers are trending back up, but I think there's certainly a demand for it. Josh and I were on the Los Banos bus once, and it was full.
It was full.
It was absolutely full every seat. So I think there's certainly a demand for it, but a lot of it has to do with the product we're delivering too. So that we've had this conversation.
Well,
that's just because you're an influencer.
Yeah, that's why they had.
It's a good service, but the point being is that we need to take a good hard look at the service we offer, and in doing so, we can provide a better product.
And that is one of the tasks that we gave Serenity, is look at our system to make it more efficient and better.
Yeah. Could be in better hands.
So
that's one thing. There's certainly there's certainly a demand.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from the board? We're going to open up to the public, and I believe that we have somebody on the Zoom that would like to ask a question?
We have an Annalie Castillo.
Okay.
Oh, she's with Santec. Annalie?
I'm sorry, this is Annalie Castillo. I'm also with Stantec. I was just trying to request access to help answer any questions, but I think Ian covered it perfectly. So I'm just here for any additional support or questions you might have for Stantec. Thank you.
Thank you, Annalie.
Okay. Thank you. We'll move on. Huh? This is an action. Oh. So, is there a motion?
I'll move to accept.
We have to motion on this?
Mm-hmm.
So we have a motion.
So we have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed?
Nay.
Okay. Passes. All right.
Chair, if I could state my reason as to why I'm voting no.
I think you already did.
Well, I just want to restate it for the record. I think that the plan's a good plan. I just don't like the fact that it doesn't tell us how much it's going to cost us.
We will bring that up. We'll bring an item to the board and a future item to present those numbers to y'all.
All right. Next, we have number 13, Executive Director's Report.
All right, so Stacy told me to give you an update, but I'm just gonna cut it short. I want to introduce our new planning person, Stephanie Davis. She comes from the city of Merced, so this tells you MCAG, you know, it's good. And then the last thing is city county dinner next month at the city of Livingston. So that's it. And thank you all for being nice.
All right. Okay, thank you. Director's reports. We'll start with Serrato. Nothing. Great. Pereira.
Stephanie, welcome to the team, and we're usually not this grumpy.
Okay, thank you. Director Silvera. Hogue.
I just want to say that we are having our fifth annual walkathon for the scholarship that I spearhead, and it is going to be at 9:30 on Saturday at the Doss Palace track. So if you can come out, walk around, give a donation. Our goal is $5,000 this year. Last year we gave out 7 scholarships, so we're hoping to give out 10 this year. But anyway, thank you very much, and that's it for me.
Okay. Director Nagy.
Welcome to the team. And Nav, you did an admirable job in Stacy's absence. I mean that sincerely. And they are this cranky all the time.
Director McDaniel.
Welcome to the team. And also Nav, good job. I thought we'd get out here a little earlier.
Yeah.
But, you know, all these presentations lined up in one day.
Stacy.
Okay. And for me, congratulations or welcome to the team. Thank you, Nav. That was probably the best executive director's report, or shortest at least, since I've been up here. So I appreciate it. So with that, we will adjourn the meeting at 5:22.